Hi everyone. All right, yep. So I'm gonna start the lecture. This is game number 7 from the book Invincible. This is the first game we're seeing Shusaku play against Yasui Sanchi. He was a really strong player at the time. He was one of a group called the Tempo Top 4. And Shusaku's master, felt that Sanchi was the strongest player out of the Tempo Top 4. And he had a reputation for a really strong fighting style. So let's take a look at the game. Empty corners to start with. Um, at this point, during those times, it was pretty normal to play A rather than. Um, it's going to be a while. Let me check really quick. Actually, I'll let Honeyboo tell you. He's got the book. 15, there you go. 14. Um, so it was pretty normal at that time to play A because white doesn't have a komi, right? But in this case, he actually approached this corner, which I guess I would say is a little more active. A works with the B stone that white already has on the board. C is more of an invasion into the right-hand side. So for the next move, what would be the basic idea? Pincer, okay, that's one idea. Empty corner, that's another idea. P4. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different ideas. I like the empty corner idea the best. Might see P17. That actually is what we see. Shusaku goes ahead and plays over here. The most normal would be to play the empty corner, right? That would be fine. Black's strategy here is that he can either do something in the empty corner next, or he can play this pincer slash shimari. Yeah, they considered shimaris to be very, very big. Shimari is just a corner enclosure. That's the Japanese term for an enclosure like this one that I've marked here. Um, so that's what we see. And so the basic idea now for white would be to take the empty corner, right? But he actually decides to do something a little different. He's essentially trying to play against what black's trying to do. So he makes a, for some reason F8 never works for the tool, so I have to click that one manually. So he makes a 5-space extension. He's negating the potential of that shimari, right? That's his idea here. And notice that um, if we just take into consideration the R10 stone, he's leaving himself a 2-space extension um, to R14. So he's not playing too close to black, right? So a little more usual might be to play this open corner. And then, as I mentioned, black's probably going to play here. He's going to make a pincer on the R5 stone while extending from his shimari. That's the idea there. Um, but white does something else. So black gets to take the empty corner. That's pretty interesting. Notice that black hasn't felt pressured in any way to play on this A stone. That's completely fine. And white tries to start a taisha joseki here, which we can sort of expect, right? Knowing that Sanchi was a fighting type of player. So he plays here. Who knows how to avoid? Oh yeah, they played it a ton back then. Commune. Yeah, I'll show the basic taisha in a second. So who knows how to avoid the taisha? Taisha is just a name for a particular. Um, it's a bunch of joseki actually. You'll see in a second. It's known as having thousands of variations. Tanuki, no. I'm sure someone knows how to avoid this. Oh, Ruckus knows, but Ruckus isn't here, and he was talking about how he couldn't wait for the lecture. Maybe he fell asleep. Diagonal attachment? Yeah, that's one way. You can do the diagonal attachment. P3. Yeah. P3 is a way to avoid it. This move probably looks really, really strange, but it's actually a good move. It was played a lot back then to avoid the difficult taisha variations, and it's still joseki today. It's still considered joseki. So the meaning of this move is black is preparing a miai. He can either jump out to A, or he can attach at B and split white. So it's a pretty good move. And so white has to follow up here, and black gets to jump out. That's what happens in the real game. If white were to block here, it's not really a good idea because black's just going to come out and white is split. So white gets to play nice and strong here, and it works pretty well with the R11 stone. So let's take a look at let's look at the normal taisha. Um, what normally happens is black tries to jump out, but white tries to wedge in between to create two cuts. And there's a bunch of variations even starting from here, but the general idea is that black wants to help the inside stone because it's the most important. So he's going to choose to connect this one. White's going to cut. Black has to keep that stone alive. White needs to help his inside weaker stones, and he takes the 3 point to do that. It's very good. Black has to help his 3 stones. And then from here, it really branches out. White can connect at A, can push at B, can play at C. There's a bunch of other like trick moves like D and other things. But the general idea is that this R11 stone is probably going to help white in the fighting. So black doesn't really have a reason to want to start this kind of fight. But yeah, you could go look it up. There's a bunch of variations, like probably more complicated than large avalanche, but I'm not really qualified to say. Um, so notice that the meaning of this exchange here was that white can no longer do the wedge, right? If white wedges, there's only one cut left, so black's completely fine. That's true. We will see an actual taisha fight in the ear-reddening game. So black's fine there for now. He jumps out in front of white. And white decides to approach this unfinished corner over here. And black's next move is very, very interesting. I think it's a type of move we can actually learn a lot from. It's probably a move that nobody would guess. Black plays here. And you have to be a really, really strong player to play this type of move and be confident in it and not think that it's slow. This move actually does a ton. So let's try and figure out. I mean, definitely black can do something else, right? It would be completely fine for black to just approach over here, and that would be the most normal sort of idea. But let's take a look at what this move actually does. First of all, if black doesn't do anything, white can play moves that put a lot of pressure on black, like this sort of move, and grow the outside. That's something he can do later. He can also play this kind of attack. Um, you know, a nice extension on the bottom and putting pressure on this weakness over here, right? White would be able to play A next. So while Black's group isn't going to die, there are weaknesses White can use. And when Black plays here, they're all gone. There's nothing White can really do to worry Black anymore. And since Black is so strong on the bottom, it also means that he can play some invading moves on the right side, like A. And that's actually what Black is aiming at, and he plays at A later, and we'll see that. But for instance, it's really hard for Black to play an invasion when White has a bunch of Sente moves against the group on the bottom, right? So that's the idea. I hope that makes sense. Black is defending first, and then he can do whatever he wants later. It's a really important idea. Okay, so White is sort of aware of this A point as well. So he actually extends here. That way, if Black invades at some point later and the B stone gets split off, yeah, please. I hope that you guys ask questions. To finish this idea up, if if the B stone gets split off, then yeah, I'll answer that in a second. Good question. White's already going to be okay, right? Because he's made this extension. Um, it's also taking away a really nice point for Black, right? That extension from the Shamari. Um, so Miyamoto was the commentator again, and he pointed out that this would be terribly slow. So this isn't the sort of move you really want to think about, right? White is staking a claim on something way too early in the game. Okay, so I think Commune's idea is this, right? Why not do this? Wouldn't that be faster than M3? Um, this leaves Sente moves though, right? So notice with this one of the main features of this move is that N3 is no longer a single stone. It's got tons of liberties. So, I mean, you can try to find a Sente move here for White. I don't think you're going to find one. Um, on the other hand, or was it? Sorry. Yeah, O3 is Sente. This is Sente, right? Hey, Ruckus. So for example, we can do Tawari analysis here, right? You guys know about Tawari? That's where we change the order of moves to analyze how efficient our stones are being. So for example, if Black plays here and White plays there, it looks like a stupid move, but this is pretty stupid too, right? Um, so I'm hoping that answers the question, Commune. He's trying to be super solid and not leave forcing moves. And that's not to say that that's the only forcing move. There's other stuff too, right? Like if Black plays at B, he's still going to be aiming at these weaknesses, like at C and D. So that's why he plays a very, very solid. Um, okay, White takes the extension here, which is very big. And Black gets to approach this corner. White actually plays the most severe possible pincer here, but Black ignores it anyway. He plays another move. It's kind of similar feeling, right? A lot of these moves we would just consider quite slow, but he's got reasons for all of them. He's playing very solid, slow and solid. So let's take a look at more normal would be Black jumps out, White is going to attack, and then we'll play from here, right? There's a bunch of joseki that can happen. and that would be completely fine. Another possibility is black can try to settle in the corner with this sort of variation. And black is nice and settled, but white's going to get sente to get this pincer. The game is still even. It's completely fine for black, but white is sort of dictating the pace of the game at this point, and that's what he's trying to avoid. Um, just as a note, you can also get into the same sort of variation in a different order here. So he actually plays super solid there. So how do we punish black for ignoring? How do we punish the sea stone? That should be the basic idea since black didn't help that stone. D15, good. So we're pretty much linking all our stones together and we're also enclosing black. Black can actually live here though, and that he goes ahead and does that immediately. Let's take a look at what happens in the game first. Um, it's a small life, but he gets to live and use that stone. Before going further, I want to point out that when black can play this wedge, it's a stronger move than just the extension that he played in the game. So let's take a look at why. It's dependent on a ladder, and if white doesn't have the ladder, white has to play from the outside. This happens a lot, so it's actually worth learning. Anyone know the next move for white here? It's kind of a cool move. At least I think it's cool. A little unusual, but it's got good reasoning to it. C18. C18's too weak. Good, Jay. Yeah, E18. Yeah, C18 would just be cut through, right? So we don't want to do that in general. Um, but why E18? Let's take a look at why. Yeah, you would go to D18, right? A lot of people would. The thing with D18 is that black has to live anyway, and now there's a cut there. You see that? So at this point, if we can move A to B, then that's pretty good for white. You see that? It's interesting. But if we just compare this result, white has weaknesses, right? There's like a peep, there's a cut. But when black has to play like this, it's just a solid white wall. So that's the difference there. Unfortunately, in this case, black doesn't have the ladder. So what white will do is he'll Atari from the inside and then connect. And this is the ladder that this whole situation depends on. And right now, black can't capture that stone in a ladder. So that's why he can't wedge. He has to just, take it easy with this move. This situation's a little interesting too. White actually just extends now. He doesn't fix this cut. He doesn't continue against the corner. And the reason for that is if white connects, black will play some sort of reducing move from the top to not allow white to use the wall all that well. And c7 is already there, right? So it's hard for white to figure out how to use this wall. And by the way, the black stones on the inside are already alive. So he's noticed that and he says, okay, why so low, k17? This is just the move that Miyamoto showed. You could probably play something different. Like you can play A, you can probably go to A. The reason I would say it's low is take a look at all black stones. What type of game is he playing? It's a territorial type game, right? So it's pretty consistent. Um, why so low for what? Oh, in the real game. Ah, this one. I think that was just their style back then. Kodoku is saying you have to play low. Maybe he has a reason. So why do you think white has to play low? My answer would be that they're just, they were more territorial back then, so they tended to play on the third line in situations that we might consider playing on the fourth. What reason do you see, Kodoku? White already has influence from d14. Okay. I understand the statement, but I don't see how that's a reason to have to play low. Reduces the inefficiency of his wall. I'm gonna have to just disagree with you there. I don't agree with that line of reasoning. Sometimes we do want to extend because we're playing an influential sort of thing. B is more territorial. Um, right. So when you play low, the thing you have to take into consideration is that this actually might reduce the efficiency of the wall because there's moves to keep it low. Um, so my answer would just be that that was more of the style back then, but I'm not completely sure about it. So what should black do now? There's a cut. Good. Cut. Correct. White didn't play, right? So black's gonna cut. And here, this is pretty interesting. Um, White breaks the sort of general rule of not playing Atari, and we'll see why that is. I'll try to explain that. He could actually just extend here without playing Atari, and Miyamoto said that this would be just as good, and it's like a matter of playing style. So let's see how this would go. Black's got to help his cutting stone. White would Hane and connect, and black would have to live in the corner. And now white can extend or can play at A, and this would be playable. Um, However, notice that white wants to play this A move to put pressure on black's corner rather than playing B. Um, so if he just plays this first, now this could be a really good move for black, right? So that's why the Atari is important. He doesn't want to allow black to get that same point. And also, these four stones are strong enough to handle it, right? We gave black A, but it's not like he can really hurt our four stones. If he could, then that Atari would be pretty bad. Black's got to live in the corner. White fixes his shape up. And now black jumps out. Notice how black is helping his weak stones without helping white. So Miyamoto pointed out that one variation we could think about and then immediately reject would be this type of pushing from behind, right? That's not something we want to do. Black got stronger, but so did white. Um, and black is actually behind white stone, so that's no good. But with this way, black helps himself, and now he can play A or B to play an attack next, right? He can play a pincer on those white stones. So white has to defend that group. It's also worth pointing out that black's corner is alive. Even if white plays really solidly here, there's nothing white can do to kill black. If he plays this, black can make a living shape. And if he plays the full monkey jump, it's still a living shape. If white plays A or B, black can just play C. So black is already alive there. Okay, so what are some ideas for black now? What are some moves you guys would think about playing here? Or the basic idea? F11. Okay, you want to help those three stones. C11. C11 looks a little too early. I said black could attack white, but that was if white didn't do anything, right? White has defended, so it's a little early to be attacking stones that just got defended. Use strength in lower right, D11. So the basic idea here, I better click Shusaku's move first because he doesn't play the basic idea. The most basic idea would be to help these three weak stones somehow. And this is the move that Miyamoto suggests, just a nice jump, right? It might look silly, but the stronger you get, the more you'll come to appreciate this sort of move. It really makes it a lot harder for white to attack these stones. But Shusaku actually made the choice to leave those three stones somewhat weak, and he's going to play the move that he aimed at or that he prepared for earlier, right? Um, and this is a pretty interesting attitude to take against the guy that had a reputation for being a really strong fighting player, right? So we can see that he's not that concerned about White's reputation for being a strong fighter. He's prepared to fight. This area, I think, I can actually learn a lot from this sort of area. Um, Here, I really wouldn't be sure what to play, and I would probably play something that was way too hasty, like trying to cap at A, which is pretty much just doomed to failure because you can't keep that stone surrounded. White plays a nice, more subtle move. He's getting stronger and he's preparing to attack black, right? Black still has to help that stone somehow. And black plays this jump. So you can see that he's really trying to put pressure on these four stones. Another idea might be to um, shoulder hit there and try to, play some forcing moves to get some shape. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting fight, actually. And White's next move, I think, is very instructive as well, right? I just pointed out that Black could play A to get a lot of shape. So what does White do? He actually plays there. And these are moves that I would never be able to find, even though they're so simple. So White's removing the forcing moves, right? If White just comes out, Black can do that same thing, and it's even better because he's got N8 already, right? So Black is just going to live really quickly, and the invasion would be successful because all the points on the right are removed. Right, that's true as well. Jay's pointing out that, Black might be able to connect to these guys later. So White plays super solid and doesn't leave those forcing moves. Also, we're starting to really feel the thinness of these two stones, right? To begin with, Black jumped 2 spaces, which is a little far, and now White is getting really strong close by, so Black has to be careful. So let's see how he deals with this. He peeps, and he plays another forcing move. Essentially, he's trying to get whatever help for that thin area as he can in Sente, and then he's trying to attack this entire thing. Pretty interesting. And you'll notice that, the spot he played on M5 is kind of like one of those angle points. So he's trying to attack white. But of course, he's got some weaknesses as well. Shopping cart shape? Yeah, almost, huh? Um, why is O6 forcing? Um, it's threatening to cut these stones off, right? Oh, okay. Sorry. So white peeps here, and black has essentially no choice of how to play. He has to connect here. Let's take a look at why he can't do something else. Black would like to play here because that separates the right side and removes the points, but this actually doesn't work. White could get a really strong counterattack here, trying to surround all these guys. And let's just take a look at how that might go. Um, White's going to cut. If black plays here, white can extend, and there's no way to kill these two stones, so that's clearly not good. P7, P7. Oh, here. Yeah, that's the next thing to look at. Hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if I mess this variation up, because that does look rather not good, right? Wrong Hane. There you go. Thanks. Yeah, so white actually wouldn't cut. He would play this Hane. Thanks, Kodoku. So same idea on this one, but in this case, white connects out, right? So, see, that's what I would do if I were playing. And then it would just get laddered, like you guys found. Um, so in this variation, this becomes a little more complicated. Black's going to try and get out. White's got to keep him in. That's also aiming at this A move, right? Black's going to try and defend it like this. White will pull back again. He's still aiming at playing here. Now black's got two choices. One is here, and so this one, yeah. I killed myself, yeah. So white's actually, hold on a second, guys. Sorry, I really confused myself this whole fight in here. Right. There we go. Okay. Sorry. So this may look like white can just connect these two stones now, but there's a problem with that, right? Does anyone see the issue? What's black going to do in this case? And 5, that's part of it. And I think that might just work. I was thinking of playing this first, and now A and B are Miai. See that? So there's a ladder, or there's capturing two stones. So in that case, white will have to connect, and now is when black has the two choices I was talking about earlier. One is he can play here. White's got to keep that separated. Black goes to live, but then white can play really solidly here, and black's alive, but this would be really good for white, right? Too much influence. So what if black Hane's here? In this case, white can cut. Okay, so, right. It's just a squeeze, right? What if black played N5 instead of M8? In the other variation, it might be. M8 was my idea. That diagram's not actually in the book. Um, it looks similar, right? It looks like one of these two groups is gonna die. So either way, black would be okay, right? So that's essentially, a lot of complicated variations just to show why black has to connect here. Um, but you can be pretty sure that they were reading all of those sort of things out. White plays here. Again, you have to read this, right? Can white just connect along the side? Um, the problem is he can't really connect, right? Black can cut this way, or he can Atari through and split the stones off that way. So not really good. So white plays here. Black defends the main stones. There's actually a lot of reading going on for all of these moves. So, for example, what about this move? In this case, white can wedge. And let's see what happens here. It looks okay, but the problem is it creates a shortage of liberties for black. And now white can connect along the side, right? Because this move is Atari. So that would be pretty bad for black, right? He's just getting a clump in the middle. Black really needs to separate the right side because that was the whole point of his invasion. Maybe he can play this move. So in this case, white again can connect though, so that's going to be a problem. This one's a little bit more interesting though. Hmm. Right. And the important move is now, right? So there you go. Good. It looks like white might lose some stones here, but it's actually a nice sacrifice technique. Because that's going to be Sente, right? Black can't connect. Not P7. P7's good though. Um, so here black actually dies, right? There's no way to capturing the two stones isn't going to make two eyes, so that's pretty bad. So you like this more? Yeah, I think um yeah, it's the same thing. I guess you could say there's a few more style points there. Um, so all of that, meant that black has to play very carefully here. Style points are very important. Black plays sort of a violent move here, looking to either cut black or connect under. Um, letting white connect under would not be good. For example, let's say black just connects, then white takes the territory and the invasion is kind of pointless. So black's going to try for better, and white cuts him. So these look like they're in a lot of trouble, right? But Shusaku's actually okay here. Because white has some things to worry about too, right? See that? This group is still has some weaknesses, and he gets a really nice cut here, all in Sente. So how do we help these five stones? Basic shape problem here. L6. Good. Black has to live. L7. I've made that mistake more than once. Yeah, L7 is like a common blitz mistake where you think you're playing L6 and then they just capture your stones. So that one wouldn't be so hot. Uh, the idea of this one is that you can't actually, you can separate that, but you can't capture the main stones. What about O9? What's O9? At what point? Like right now? Like play O9? Um, it seems like you're probably helping black and wasting some Aji because you have to help these. You're gonna have to help these five stones anyway. So it's probably better to wait for that. Um, Black has lived here now, so white has to live. M7 if O9. M7. So you want to squeeze and then live, and then white still has to live. Yeah, that seems reasonable too, right? White really doesn't like being squeezed into that sort of shape. Good. Here, white lives. This is Sente, right? Otherwise, black can play at A. So white has to play at A. Um, White's actually being really careful here because This move actually doesn't live. If white were to play that, now it turns into a ko, right? That would be a ko. If white connects, this move shows up again. So those are the only moves there. And at this point, black has lived, white has lived, and the important thing is the D stones and the C stones, right? So black's going to pull these stones out because they're actually worthwhile. They're cutting two weak groups. That's something you should always, check before you save your stones. Ask the question, are they actually important stones? So where's the next shape point for white on the B stones? L8, good. Nice shape. Black jumps and white plays here. I really appreciated this move. Seeing this move, you might normally think about jumping, but this move seems so nice because it takes into consideration that, you know, black stones have liberty problems, and it's also the point that black would want to play, right? Makes that nice shape and is starting to connect over towards the left side. So this is really helping the A group, keeping some pressure on the B group, and also making sure that the C group stays disconnected. So that was a nice move. Black starts pressuring over here. And a peep. And this part is interesting. So white actually switches to do something else. He's trying to get extra help. So let's see what happens first. Um, Normally black should respond because he's being contacted. Uh, but in this case he doesn't have time. So he actually goes ahead and cuts right through. And we get a sort of trade here. Black gets to capture these 4 stones, but white gets to destroy the corner, right? Pretty interesting. So why did white do this? White can actually live without doing that. He's got sente, sente. He can make this I. The problem is that when black plays here, this would be sente. If white ignores, black can play here. White's got to answer, and then black can play here. And it's really hard for this group to live. So what that means is, right, Kodoku's right. White would have to live in Gote here, and that's not what he wants. So his idea is, if I contact here and you answer me, I can get some extra help first. Then I can go back and live. And now, later on, I might even be able to jump out to here. And it's not that easy to stop, right? And at the same time, if black defends it, white's already alive because of those nice exchanges. So it's pretty complicated when it comes down to the reading, but I'm hoping that we can take something from the idea of what's going on here. So this exchange was quite well played by both. Miyamoto considered it to be a fair trade. So at this point, black goes back and plays the move that we called bad earlier. But the board has changed now, right? White's gotten stronger in the center, and black has decided that it's now time to help these A stones. So he goes ahead and pushes again. He's just trying to get his group strong. Um, and now normally white would respond to that, but he plays away here. And this move is actually really strong. One thing it's trying to do is activate some Aji in these dead stones. And the other thing it's trying to do is get ready to launch an attack on the entire, that top area. Miyamoto said that actually white would love to keep attacking black if possible. The problem is that there's just no good way to do it. So if he tries like a double Hane here, black can counterattack. Um, what's the next move here? This is a pretty cool Tesuji problem. C10, not quite. B11. Yeah, B11 is really cool. Um, White essentially has two choices. If white captures, then white gets the Atari and can win on the liberties, 4-3. And if white plays here, black can just connect, right? So he's captured cutting stones and he's connected. So hard to attack that way. But if we back off, black can just push again, and he's not really worried because he's strong over there, and he can just settle. So it's not really interesting for white. That's why he did something else. Black, of course, notices that he needs to deal with his stones on top now, so he tries to get some forcing moves. Where's the strongest move for white here? Connect. Good. Good. So Q7 or Q17, A or B would essentially just help black. I understand the idea behind Q17. You're thinking, okay, let's really try and hurt him here. The problem is these stones need help, right? So you just end up giving black additional forcing moves. Whereas if you connect here, you don't give him anything. You see that? It's a very important idea. In the same way, if you play here, you give the Atari for free. Yeah, it's probably not that easy to see at your level, Tyrannus, but what I would say is white is making himself super strong, and then, now there's no move that black can get for free, right? I should actually click black's move before I destroy the tree. But for example, if black plays here, white doesn't necessarily have to do anything. But if you come through like this, now all of a sudden your two stones are weak, right? You feel like you probably need to help those guys out. And essentially all you've done is you're giving black free moves that you didn't really need to give him. So he's probably going to live pretty easily. You don't what? So white responds by jumping. White could Tanuki at that position. Are you talking about this one? Whether or not you actually could, the two stones I have marked here have all sorts of weaknesses, right? Yeah, there's just more forcing moves. So I don't necessarily want to get into the specifics of, he would play this and then that. What's more important is the idea that those stones have a weakness. And that's the meaning of this move is, this A move is to get rid of all of that. So white jumps out. Black still wants to help these stones. So he plays here. And at this point, A would live for black. So white does have to play there anyway. But notice it's not forced. If something different happened, he might not have had to play there. So it's a small distinction, but it's pretty important. At this point, black decides these guys are going to be okay for now. He plays a forcing move here, which is normally not really good because it just makes white solid. But he's worried about some of the aji over here with these stones. And we'll see a lot of that later, actually. And Miyamoto's point was that this exchange is okay because what black does next is that he completely solidifies these stones. So do you see that? There's kind of a nice flow to it. He plays here. Black makes himself stronger, which makes the sea stones weaker. So now he's going to defend them. It has a nice flow to it. Nice. Yeah, I mean it's not, that exchange doesn't completely get rid of the aji, right? Because it's so far away from those stones. Um, um, Here, white would like to counterattack. Again, he would like to, but the problem is there's a lot of weakness on these two stones, right? Because black got the hane at both sides. So let's take a look at some attacks white might think about. You might think about playing here. The problem is if black does this, that makes this cut sente. And then black can just make nice shape on the outside. So it's pretty pointless for white to be cutting there, or to be haneing there rather. E8 first. Do you mean right now, right? Okay, so E8. F9. We have to go back here still, right? I suppose that could be an idea if you really want to run these guys out. They're probably just going to be two somewhat heavy stones, though. But it's definitely, it's a good point. If white really wants to cut, that's something you can think about. There's another cut white can try, which is here. How should black respond to this? Wow, this game is going to go quite over the hour. D8. Any better? D8 is the main move, but there's an exchange you should make first. F9. F9 looks like trying to net something you can't net. F10. There you go. Okay, so This is important. Let me try to talk about the meaning of this. I said that the main move is here, and it is, um, but that would allow white to play this point. Whereas if you play here, what you're doing is you're making white heavier first. So now white's heavier and you still got that same point you wanted to play. And you're right, white is about to die. So these stones are heavy, and beyond that, if black plays here, there's actually no two eyes on the inside. Um, so again, that's just a bunch of diagrams to show why white had to really play patiently here and just fix his shape up, which allowed black to fix up. And so this move has sort of been white's goal since he played A. It's a really strong attack on the top stones, and this fight turns pretty crazy, and there's a ton of variations. Um, but let's just try and work through it and see how it goes. Black plays a really strange looking move. Um, Normally you would expect this, right? But the problem is it's actually a bit dangerous. The variation Miyamoto showed is that white can just continue here. If black tries to get more space, white can peep and then take that one stone to keep the eye space low. Notice that N18 is right on the vital point. And it's hard for black to come through the center because moves like A and B are going to be sente and use the aji of these stones over here uh, that I mentioned earlier. So let's see. If we go this way, unfortunately, black's cut doesn't work. Essentially, black can't get any more than 2 liberties, right? So this would be pretty dangerous because locally black is dead. That's why he played a strange looking move. Okay, so next move. Next move is important. Um, and I thought the comment Miyamoto made about it was pretty good. He said, no matter what happens, the next move has to be at a certain spot. N14. No, sorry. And I can tell you the reason N14 is wrong is because it doesn't use these stones very well. O15, good. Yeah. Okay, so no matter what happens, black wants to play here because we need to keep as much pressure on these stones as possible. Otherwise, white's just going to capture us easily. So he plays here. White plays this nice diagonal. Um, Miyamoto pointed out that if white played here, black would play here. This is a little advanced, but essentially what he was saying is that black could play here to complicate the situation, and then after playing at h17, A would pretty much be sente or semi-sente for playing either B or C. That's essentially all he said about the matter, is that it would be more complicated. So that's why white plays here. Again, black is mostly focused about keeping the liberties down. So he plays here. Notice that black could capture next if he plays at A. But white doesn't help those stones. He plays here first because this is actually sente. Black has to fix. Let's see why that is. If black just contents himself to capture these, white can get a forcing move right here because of that stone, right? He's about to capture 3 stones. So black would have to fix now. And then this is going to become a ko. And it's not really a reasonable ko for black to play because if he loses the ko, not only do the A stones come back alive, but the entire B group could be at risk as well. So that's why he plays nice and solid there. And white gets a chance to bring his stones out. Black has to connect, right? Connects his stones up. And now this is pretty interesting. White plays here anyway, right? We've been treating these stones as dead the entire time. And it looks like on the outside, black has actually connected everything up. And he actually has, but unfortunately Shusaku makes what Miyamoto calls a detour that really complicates the game for himself. He plays here and he intends it as a forcing move, but white is really strong and white actually ignores it. And it gets really, really complicated from here because of that. So what he suggests is that black should just take a liberty from these stones, and there's nothing white can do at this point. So let's take a look at that. If white plays this same move, this is a little surprising. I think you guys will like this. Black actually still has to be really, really careful here. Let's take a look at the aji. If black plays here, it's a big mistake. White can push, threatening to kill the entire top. Then he can cut, again threatening to kill the entire top. And then he can play there. That's pretty nice, huh? Pretty cool. So black wouldn't be able to connect at A because it's connect and die. So the only move for black is here, but now there's simply there's no weakness. Black is all connected. So this is what Miyamoto suggested. Yeah, it is pretty amazing what could happen in that shape there. The problem is these stones can't go anywhere because black already reduced a liberty. So that was his suggestion. There's a couple other things white could try, but none of it really works. If he Ataris here and tries to wedge, black can Atari. Obviously white can't connect, right? That would just die, so that's no good. But maybe he could try something here. And maybe try this similar idea. But the problem is his liberties are just too short, so he's not going to be able to cut. 014 before N11. So like right now, which diagram? Right now, then N13. Oh, I see. Okay, so you're trying to change the order a little bit. Yeah, because white's already in Atari, right? That's a problem. Um, let me see. Okay, yeah, so I showed that one. There's one more in this area. White might try to force here first, and then play here. So where should black play in this case? And you actually have to be careful here. See, you got tricked. It's a little more precarious than it looks like. R9. Okay, so both of the moves you guys said have the same weakness. So if you play here, you have killed these guys, that's for sure. But you have to be a little careful because remember this? It's cut, right? All the top stones are gonna die. N12. Oh, that's probably your candidate for the first move, right? Yeah, yeah, you're correct. So R9 is actually the same, Hu. If you play here, the problem is white's still gonna abuse this. See that? So even in this case where it looks like black has such a strong grip on white, black has to play really, really carefully. And yeah, this is the move, N12. I appreciate that this is really complicated, by the way, but I know a lot of you probably find it interesting as well. So this part you can treat more as entertainment than, lesson. It's fun. Yeah, there you go. So that was Miyamoto's suggestion. He said black went wrong with this move. White gets to wedge here, and now black has a little bit of a problem. So what he actually does is he captures these stones, but let's take a look at why. Obviously this isn't going to work, right? Because this is the same thing we saw in the first place, right? So that hasn't changed. That would still work for white. The question is, what happens with this? And the problem is white has a free liberty now, so this is more complicated. For example, white has a liberty to play here. Um, Black's going to have to connect. White can take, can come out. Now it looks like there's some stuff going on there, right? And I think white can probably even go here, right? Let's see here. Maybe not. Yeah, probably not. So where's the move for black here? Any ideas? This diagram's not from the book, by the way. P10, R10. This one I think is going to have some problems. White will make one exchange and cut. Important exchange, by the way. If you just cut, I guess you can still Atari at this point, though, can't you? Yeah, you could still Atari now, but it's better to exchange it earlier. Yeah, it's just better to make that exchange earlier. Uh, Essentially, there's more issues this way. So that's why black just had to capture these for now. But now something's going to happen. So let's take a look. Let's just see what happens. White Hane is here. That's threatening to come through and kill the entire top group. So black has to respond to that. And now white comes out here. So if you notice what's happened here is that this entire thing is being cut off. And that's quite a problem. Black has to figure out how he's going to live here now. And here is where the most complicated diagrams come. So let's just see a couple more moves of the actual game. Uh, Yasui Sanchi actually plays here, and Miyamoto didn't like it. And I'll show what he thinks he should have done instead in a second. Essentially, what happens is black is able to put a bunch of pressure on these stones. So these aren't alive yet either, right? It's only 6 in a row, so that's not alive. Um, so let's take a look at Miyamoto's suggestion. He thinks white should play here to capture one stone. Black can push in and play here. This is a pretty interesting move. And now white's corner needs a move to live. Um, Locally, if black plays it at B, there's no way to get 2 eyes, right? So assuming white lives, and black takes an eye, white will have to play over here. Yeah, we'll look at that in a second. That's actually one of the big questions I had, and Miyamoto didn't really address it. Maybe you can help me figure it out. But for now, let's look at this. So white would actually have to play here at M16 at this point. And now what's going to happen here is white's going to create a ko. No eye versus 1 eye, or 1 eye versus 2 eyes. I would say no eye versus 1 eye. So this is a ko, because this is sente, right? Black's about to capture these. So black gets to capture the ko first. And oh, for a second I thought I was like off on this tangent and that I broke the tree, but I haven't broken the tree yet. T14 earlier. Any reason to play it? That's just like a habitual throw-in, right? Like here, you want to play it here. You can't capture those stones yet because white has 1 extra liberty, so that's why, right? Yeah, I'm gonna let you read that. Black can't capture those just yet, um, but now he could. So black doesn't really have threats, so he would connect the ko, and white can kill this corner. And Miyamoto thinks that this would be an even game still, or it would be close to even. So he thinks this would be much better for white. Oh, endgame. So let's say we do it now. I don't think it's going to make any difference in this case. Similar, right? White just has to play another move. Um, Earlier I mentioned that white has to play here. Let's take a look at why that is. Let's say white doesn't play over there. This connection is sente to capture these guys, and then black can get his second eye here out of nowhere. So let's go back to the earlier question. So you wanna poke this eye out first, right? Before you live? That was the question? Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to do too. And are you going to play A now or B? T19. Okay, so yeah, as far as I could tell, this looked valid to me. I don't think it changes that much. A is still the shape. So where would you play for black, Kodoku? I think I think black has to start this ko. You would play here, but do you have time to make the eye? Because it's still only one eye, right? Don't you have to go for the ko? You don't need the time? Save M16 for ko threat. That sounds that sounds like a good idea, actually. Yeah, so I think essentially it's going to be ko either way, right? This is still going to be sente, and then we're still going to be in this ko situation, and it doesn't really matter that white poked that out, I guess. That was the best I could figure it out. So many variations. It's only a few more complicated ones. But so he played here instead, and now he's got to deal with his stones. Um, this essentially turns into a big semi-eye, right? It's a capturing race between A and B. And white plays here for now. If white cuts, where's the move for black locally here? You can't just give R18 up for free, right? Good. Nice, Saib. Yeah. Black's going to start a ko here. And so let's look at some of the diagrams that were suggested for what could happen with this ko. Um, One thing black might try to do is cut this off, or at least threaten to cut it off. That's certainly a ko threat. White can make a ko threat over here to kill the two stones. And then black might try to play here as a ko threat, but white has a really good answer, which is here. So let's see, what would happen from here? Black's going to want to keep those stones cut off. But now white can, suddenly just abandon the ko and try to fight and kill this whole thing. So it's A against B right now. And you could check this out. White actually wins this by, yeah, it's not really abandoning it. It's finishing it. That's a bad way of putting it. But it's not a, yeah, it's not a ko anymore. He's saying, I'm just going to kill you now. Um, so white actually wins this by 1 liberty, A against B. Black actually has an I and white doesn't. Can anyone tell me? No, this isn't. This isn't the game tree. This is a variation. Can anyone tell me why it doesn't matter that black has an I? It's important to understand. Yeah, there you go. There's no shared liberties, so the I doesn't really matter. That's why. That's the case. So yeah, we're not on the game tree. In the real game, white played here. I'm just showing what might happen if white plays this move instead, which would turn out to be that ko. Are these are these interesting to you guys? Just as a question, there's like a few more of this type of variation, and I'm wondering if it's worth showing or if it's better to just skip. Okay, you like them? Okay, good. So the other thing Miyamoto pointed out is that this move would be really important. So if white just skips to this move first, then black can play here. It's a really nice move. Even though the cut was good for white, he couldn't read all that out. Which cut are we talking about? Oh, yeah. I'm not sure which cut you mean. Q18. Oh, actually, white read Q18 quite well. We just haven't gotten to the conclusion yet of why he didn't want to play that way. We're kind of like in the middle of the variations here. So in this case, if black gets this move, it's pretty hard for white. Let's see what happened here. Black can connect, can play here, and white actually has to get out because if he plays here, it's going to be a big giant squeeze, right? He's surrounded anyway. So white has to get out. Black can finish these stones off with the snapback and also threatening the ko. And then he can come out. And if you notice, this whole string of stones is not alive yet. So, and black is out. So that would be pretty bad for white. It's really hard to keep track of all these variations. So at this point, we already looked at A, right? Black lost the semi-I. So Miyamoto suggested that black would need to capture here instead. Just start the ko. White has a nice ko threat here, and black can't afford to answer it. So finish the ko. Now keep in mind that finishing the ko means that not only is he living, he just killed this big white group, so that's pretty nice. But white gets to connect. Black removes the Aji from the right side. White connects. So these guys are all dead, right? Black makes his second I. and white would get to play here. Miyamoto said not even because white gets sente to play here. So black A lived, B died, C died, but the way he, you know, in all these diagrams, he was talking about how sente was really important, and he thought this one would be a little good for white. So if all these diagrams are good for white, why didn't he play there? The reason is there's a much simpler diagram, which is when white starts the ko, black can play here. White has to save these guys, and he can try to do it right here. Black ignores to take the ko, so white gets to capture. So again, this was another sente thing. This might look pretty good for white, but in this case, black gets sente. And according to Miyamoto, he thinks that that's why white decided that he didn't want to play there. Not quite good enough for white. This is like so far beyond my ability that it's not even funny though. Like imagining thinking about all these variations and making these sort of decisions, I would be completely lost. Uh, so in any case, white plays here, and we're still doing the A versus B thing. White plays an outside move, sees if white's going to let him out. White says, no, you can't come out. Black connects. White pokes at the eye, right? We're doing the whole fight. White connects here to essentially just put some aji on these stones and make it harder for white to approach, right? Obviously, he can't save these stones, but he's making it harder for white to, approach in the semi-eye. So he does that first, and then he makes his connection here. White's trying to get some liberties. We all know this shape, right? Everyone's familiar with this one. So locally white is dead, locally black is dead, so it's just a semi-eye. Miyamoto's question here was that white must have miscalculated, and by that, he means misread, because it doesn't seem good for white. Black's actually ahead in this capturing race. So white plays a move over here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. First, let's see what's actually going on in the top right. If white tries to continue the semi-eye, this is one way that he might do that. Black's got to take liberties, but he can't play there yet, right? Because his two stones are too weak, so he's got to connect solidly first. White can take a liberty, black takes a liberty, just taking liberties from the outside. Finally, we say Atari. White captures, black has to connect. And you'll notice that black has some liberties on the outside. So this is actually a step ko for white. And that's not good, right? It's hard to win a ko like that. It's favorable for black. But maybe he can try to start a different ko in this area. We saw this a little earlier, similar. Step ko means that you have to win multiple times, essentially. So for instance, white has to keep taking liberties, right? Black takes. Yeah, see, white can't even capture, so that's no good. So we have to make some co-threat, right? Some co-threat, and then black makes some co-threat. White has to ignore that to take another liberty. Black still can, take. White makes another threat. Black answers. White take. Yeah, so it's just white has to play way more moves than black to win the ko than black does. That's all it means, essentially. Um, but maybe white can start a different ko over here. So let's take a look at that. It's a ko threat. Using the ko as a ko threat. Ko threat. At this point, white doesn't really have the ko threats locally, so Miyamoto thinks he'll capture, and then black will capture. So he doesn't think this is really good for white because you have to remember the original situation. White was trying to kill black, right? He cut the whole B group off, um, and now but B is alive and white barely lived, so not really great. But however, there's the ko-ajis lurking there, right? So what white's actually trying to do over here is create enough ko-threats that he can start one of those variations. Black is completely aware of this. So what black does is he answers a little bit, and then he says, okay, no more of that. I don't want you to be able to do that ko. And okay, so let's take a look here now. This is dead, and this is dead, right? So black actually has a lot of points, and white has to get a lot of compensation in order to still have a chance here. So first he peeps. He's got to somehow get a big kill. I don't know why they play so violently. Black plays a nice response here, right? White can't cut at A because black could just capture it. Black's just getting some more forcing moves. And then he goes away again. Says, okay, I'm going to take these two. So now there's no problem at all on the right side. And all of this is dead, right? So when you kill that much, you have a lot of points, right? So white actually needs to do a lot. And cutting at A isn't enough. Miyamoto said that if white cuts at A, it actually doesn't make up enough points. So he goes for he's trying to kill even more. He wants to kill the whole thing. He plays here. Black goes to get another forcing move. Comes out. These are weak too, right? So it's not easy to try and kill when your stones have their weaknesses of their own. Double Hane. Yeah. Black switches directions here. He peeps. White is not going to let black connect both weak groups. And then he plays here, which is Sente. White has to answer. If white captures to connect these stones, black can poke, Atari, and kill. It's only one eye. There's a more interesting idea though. What if white tries to live in Sente? Because black's corner isn't alive yet now. Um, in theory, that's all right, but the problem is black will just ignore it to kill these stones. And now where for white in the top left? Man, we're gonna go almost 2 hours on this one. I'm sorry, this one's pretty long. A17. But if you play A17, I can make a ko, right? With B17. E10. E10, that cut is big, but white's still behind. A17. Oh, you're right. It's not even a ko with A17. Thanks, Shrew. I was thinking of the ko, but it's not, right? Did you see that commune? This sequence that he just pointed out is that black can give it away with this counter Atari. A18, good. Yeah. But what is this? What's the result here? Seki? Yeah, it should be ko. So black got to do, take care of the bottom left and still ko. Like this? You mean right now, Ruckus? White can just Atari and connect. So white's having some difficulty, so that's why he had to answer here. Black's gonna fix things up. This move is necessary because if white gets that, then it's pretty much BC or Miai, so he's got to be careful there. This would be a really good time to ruin the tree, you know? I'm so close. And now I'm like worried about what the right move is. White's got to try and cut and do something. And now he plays here. But when black plays here, white actually resigns. Um, yeah, I made it, didn't I? White resigns. So white can actually capture these, but it's not such a big deal. Why is that? Well, locally, we can't gain liberties here, but what can black do? Connection, yeah. We can live by connecting. We can just play here. And white can't block us because then he'll lose a liberty, right? If you block, then you're just gonna die. So, oops, same difference. So white would capture, but black connects, and he can connect here as well. So we can connect everything, and it's not enough points for white. Let's look at one more possibility. Maybe white could play here. In that case, black will definitely capture this cutting stone. The idea here is that at least black is still split. But the problem is now black has A, B, Miai for his second eye, right? He's already got one eye over here. And Ruckus is saying white dies. Um, that could also happen too. So where's the move for black? Yeah, A2. So that's the other weakness white has to worry about. And next move? Not bulky 5. Now, a lot of players get confused and see this shape and think it's Seki, but it's not Seki. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, like in my friends' games, and their opponent forces them to like prove that it's dead because they want to mark it Seki at the end. So why is this dead? Right, bent 4 rules. So in case that's not clear to anyone, uh, the reason this group is dead is because later on, um, essentially by the end of the game, let me just capture that. Black can eventually play this bent 4, which is Atari, and then black can play here. And locally, this is actually a ko, but the idea with the Japanese rules is that black can just wait until there's no ko threats anymore. Um, so actually, when it's in this shape, in Japanese rules, it's already considered dead. It's a little bit of a complicated rule, but the idea behind it is that it's a ko that black could force at any time. Um, in other rule sets, they have to play it out, right? Um, well, there's different rule sets, right? And I'm gonna just tell you right now that that really bores me. I know some people really get interested with the different rule sets and how they work, but like in the USA we use AGA, and AGA considers this dead. Um, Japanese rule since 1989. I think in Chinese rules it's not dead. I think you have to play it out in Chinese rules, like Chinese counting rules. When you play it out, it's dead. That's gonna get really complicated. You could probably look it up on like Sensei's library, but I think there's certain situations where white could get some utility out of that ko, which makes it, it's not quite just dead. Right, right. So probably go look that up on Sensei's. Um, in any case, that was the game. So Shusaku Let me go to where the actual end was. He was able to hold his own against this really strong, fighting player who was a 7-dan, and Miyamoto's his only criticism of Black's play, the entire thing, was that this move was a bit of a detour, and he could have played here, and it would have been much easier. But other than that, he played really well. Semidori means that you have to play extra moves to capture the stones that are inside, and by doing so, you lose points. Semidori is not capturing race. Semei is capturing race. Semidori is different. So sometimes if you're watching like a really high level game, you'll notice that one of the players might make some moves, and even though his group is still dead, it allows him to get free moves on the outside. And then, for example, the player that's killing might have to play like 3 extra moves to kill, and by doing so, loses like 3 points. So that's the idea of a Semidori. You can look that up as well, though. Um, that was it. I feel a little bad that this one was so complicated and took so long. Wasn't that easy to keep track of all the diagrams either. Let's see, the next game has less diagrams. That's good. That'll give me, it won't be as complicated. 6D? Who are we talking about? Um, yeah, I do memorize the diagrams, which normally goes okay, except for that early time around here. I definitely was making some mistakes. It's not a Miyamoto book. It's Invincible by the Kiseido book Invincible, and Miyamoto is just one of the commentators. So like he's the commentator for next week as well. But the game after that is commentated by a different guy. Let's see, Kubomatsu Katsukiyo. And like they're usually half as long in terms of diagrams and stuff when it's not Miyamoto. I think this Miyamoto guy really likes detailed commentary. Ford Fordon? Um in the book it shows him as 3-dan for this game and 4-dan for the next game. Yeah. It makes sense that he would get promoted. I mean, obviously his rank is too low because he's beating these top players. Even though they don't have Komi, it's pretty clear that his rank is way too low. All right, guys. Hope to see you next week.